What's up, YouTube? So I've watched a lot of streamers recently. I'm a little bit of a baby streamer myself. People just having troubles with mixing audio. They want their Discord audio to be a separate line so they can mute it while they're streaming. Let's say they're playing in tournaments, or they want music. They can listen to music while they don't want it in the stream, or just in general, you need the ability as a streamer or YouTuber to have a proper control over your audio beyond just the Windows default, what it gives you. All right, so we're going to start with Voicemeeter here. Voicemeeter Banana, you're going to download it and you're going to install it. Pretty simple. It's going to ask you to restart your computer. Once your computer is restarted, you're going to end up with this interface right here. Okay, so step one, as you can see down below right here, I'm going to have the steps written out, what I'm explaining to you and what's going on. Okay, so step one, explaining the layout and comparing a picture to real hardware mixer. So example, what is this and what are you staring at? Does anybody's ever looked at this before? That is exactly what you need to kind of remind yourself is. All these sliders and all these little buttons you're looking at is technically representative of what this would be. So if you were using a hardware mixer in real life, you'd be looking at something like this. If you're using a software mixer like Voicemeeter Banana, you're looking at this. And if you're wondering why you cannot resize the window cannot be resized because it's got too many sliders on it. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's got about 10 sliders on it, all these knobs. To resize a window like that, it breaks a lot of numbering in those sliders, so that you don't bother. Here, you're going to set it as your main speaker system. So whatever you currently use as your main default output for your computer, whether that be a DAW, a DAC, or you're just generally using the outputs on the motherboard, and then that's going to be your main system one. So the main one you use. Typically also you'll want to use the analog one. So if you have like, speakers and a headset, use the speakers and then we're going to set up the headset or any secondary devices you have as A2 and A3. So again, remember, first one, always be the speaker system setup. And again, you're going to want to try and use WDM as your driver setup. Don't use MME whenever you can. If MME is the only choice you have, you pick it with your device, but use WDM or ASIO if you have ASIO. But ASIO is usually on professional audio gear only. 2, we're going to go over here and we're going to set up our microphone. So these 3 lines are your mic lines. I have these 2 used for other stuff. So here we're going to stick over here. We're going to pick. For here, I got my Blue Yeti. As you can see, I'm using the WDM driver for the Blue Yeti. And up here, as you can see, I have like these named. You can rename this stuff, right? So I can call it Mic Blue Yeti. That way you can get some congruence into what you're actually working with. So you can see I got tablet, chat, VoIP. Up here, we got, different names. Keep that in mind. Just rename things as you're working along your workflow because it helps you understand your audio chain. That's something I'm going to be using as a term a little bit here, is the word audio chain. Okay, so step 3. Now we are setting up. So once you've got your mic set up, you're going to be using B2 as your output. So what these lines are, B1 and B2, I'll show you exactly what these mean. So once you've got Voicemeeter installed, if ever you understand what this page is, this is your, like the Windows sound output page. So if you want to know how I got there, I just right clicked on the sound icon here and I just went to sound setting. I just went to sounds. Right, you just go to sounds and then there's playback and recording. This menu is a little bit easier to understand than the new Windows 10 menu. So just keep it like that. So what is B1 and what is B2? Well, once you install Voicemeeter, you get now two new things here in your recording tab and your playback tab. So if you notice now in the recording tab, when I'm talking, the wave bar on the Blue Yeti is moving up and the wave bar on the Voicemeeter VAIO is moving up and aux VAIO is moving out. So what are those? So to give some congruence here, I'm going to turn off, because we're going to use B2. B2 is aux output. Okay, so I'm going to go like this. I'm going to go properties. We're going to leave it as aux output. And we can call this B2. Apply. And then we can go here. We can call that output B1. Okay, so that helps you understand what B1 and B2 is. Okay, so those are your output mic lines. Okay, so you now have an extra line for outputting on a mic line if you want to as well. The reason why you're always using B2, why am I using B2 here instead of B1, is because 90% of the time you want to use the auxiliary line first and then the virtual audio interface after. So that's what this stands for. So there's the auxiliary auxiliary virtual audio interface, and then you have the straight virtual audio interface. Try and always use the auxiliary first, and then treat the virtual line as your second line. So that should be step 3, understanding what B2 is. So now you've got your output set. Actually, last step, once you're in this tab and you've chosen B2 here, you're going to want to pick this, and you're going to right click it, and you're going to set it as your default device. So let's say that my Rift S was my default device currently. I set it as my default device. Also, as you can see, it's set as my default communication device. The reason why you want to do that is because in certain applications, like let's say you're playing Call of Duty Warzone or like a Fortnite, there's a couple of those games, they look for the mic based on the Windows default communication device. So you got to pick your microphone line output as this. So you set your default communication device and the default device as this. And that is actually kind of a good thing, because now that games are starting to treat default communication devices as the mic line, it actually means that you can separate them naturally. All right, step 4. Now this is really going to go back to the Windows sound settings. So again, we're going to open up the Windows sound settings, and we're going to go to playback. So now this is the playback is your output side. So this is, again, where you're going to pick your aux input. So on playback, it's going to be listed as aux input and Voicemeeter input. Disregard the fact that it says input. Set your aux input as default, as your default device, and set it also as your default communication device for now. For now. We'll go from there for now. This is going to make it so that all sound that you play on A1 goes in there. Remember how we picked A1 as your default speaker system? So what that means is the speakers currently here, which would normally be my default, audio system, is now being routed through Voicemeeter, and I'm defaulting it onto this. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, step 6. Step 6 is the really interesting one, and this is where it gets really kind of confusing. So when we're working with audio, a lot of people always will see these like terms like, the higher number the better, right? Like, oh, it's got to be better, right? You need to make sure that your audio quality is a set standard across all your devices. So if I open up Voicemeeter on the aux line, it is set to 4800 hertz, right? If I go on any one of my other devices, even if I go on my Blue Yeti, 4800 hertz. On the recording side as well for my Blue Yeti, right? 4800 hertz. It's all 4800 hertz. You need to make sure that that is across the board everywhere. And then if you're going to stick with 4800 hertz, you go here to system settings and make sure this is set to 4800 hertz as well. Most of the times people play at 44100, but I would actually recommend to just bump it up a little bit to that DVD quality. Okay, step 7. Step 7, we're going to rename all the audio lines just like we did in B2 for A1, A2, A3, just to have a little bit of congruency. So as you can see, we renamed these two. We're going to go to playback. So Voicemeeter aux, we're going to rename it to, I'm going to rename it to main, right? This is your main line you want to use. Voicemeeter VIO, I'm going to rename it to, we'll call it second line. Okay. What do these coincide to? These coincide to these two things over here. So you're going to right click here. You can name it to main like I just did. Right click here, name it to second. Okay. So these two lines are your output sounds. So this is where it comes into your ears, into your headphones, or it would come out your speakers. So for your main, obviously choose your main as your default device. You're going to choose a second line as your default communication device. This is for other Windows apps that don't have the ability to concurrently pick their stuff, and certain games as well are starting to, like I brought up earlier, segregate their mic line / blap. I'm going to start this over. Certain games are, segregating their mic lines and VoIP lines essentially onto the default communication device traffic. So you're going to want, like we're going to treat your second line as your VoIP line. We're going to set your default communication device as line 2. Okay, So once those are set up, you have a little bit of congruency into everything that's going on. You now understand what A1 is. You understand what A2 is. A2 would be your second device. Second line is this second line here. Now you want both of these to be playing on A1. If you want to listen what's going on in these lines, of course you need to have A1 selected on this. So that of course means if I wanted to listen to myself talk, I would hit A1 here, and now I can hear myself talk. So on anything on these lines, I can hear them when I send it on A1. And as well, that means if you want someone to listen to music, let's say if someone's like, hey, I want to listen to what you're playing for like a split second in Discord, you can send your desktop audio line down B2, or you could send your second line down B2. You have that option now with the mixer. Your audio can now be sourced in any audio chain. Remember I brought up the term audio chain before? You can put anything now on an in and out basis, depending on how you choose. So now that we understand that a little bit, we got main picked, we got that picked as our default device. We're going to scroll down here. We're going to open up Discord now, and I'm going to show you how to set Discord to use the Blue Yeti, or not the Blue Yeti, but B2 as its mic line, and then it's going to be using the second line here as its output. Okay, so we're going to open up Discord now, step 8. And I'm going to show you guys now that we've set up this, how do you isolate your audio. So we're going to go to Discord here, and we're going to go to voice settings. So once you go to voice settings here, you can see already I have my input device set to aux output B2. And for you guys, you're going to set it on your line 2, which is currently set to second line Voicemeeter bio. Discord can be annoying when you have very long device names. You can't read them all completely, which is why I do recommend renaming your devices so that you can find them a little easier here. So you're going to pick second line. I have chat/VoIP line on a third line. I will teach you that in an advanced YouTube video, how to do a couple more advanced things with Voicemeeter. But for now, I'm going to teach you how to use the 2 lines. So you've done that. You choose it as aux B2 there, and then this is going to be going to second line. Done. Now, what that means is Discord is going to be routed through this line, and now your desktop audio is going to be playing on this line. Now, how do you bring that into OBS or SLOBS, whichever one you use? So, okay, step 8. So now, when you want to bring in your mic lines and your Discord lines into separate devices here, it's the same thing. So if I'm going to teach you in OBS first, and then I'll do it in SLOBS second. So as you can see, my desktop audio is already going to be set to, if I go to properties, it is set to my default device, which is the Voicemeeter line, and my mic line is also set to the default device, which is my Voicemeeter line. You could pick these according to what you want, right? Okay, now when you want to add the new lines, we're going to go like this. We're going to go and we're going to add an audio output capture. We're going to add a new one, and we're going to call it Discord. Or actually, I typically call it chat/VoIP. You can call it what you want. Okay? And then we're going to pick here, and you're going to see, you're going to pick it as your second line, as we set up earlier. Line 2, boom, done. Now, any traffic that gets routed through there, you know, as I said, any traffic that gets routed through this line here is now isolated and is no longer part of the desktop audio line. Boom, done, perfect. You have now, and you have the ability of now actually mixing it too. So sometimes people will say, Discord's louder than you. Well, now you can do something like this. You know, I can have my mic perfectly like this, and I can have Discord always about minus 25 decibels, you know, below me. So people in Discord are always quieter than me because I am the streamer. I want to take, you know, presence the most in the channel, but I still want my viewers to be able to hear Discord sometimes, as long as that's part of the content you're trying to provide. Okay, now for SLOBS. For SLOBS, I'm not going to show you the full screen of SLOBS because I do have some personal information on SLOBS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit on the sources side. Obviously, if you know what you're doing, you hit the plus on sources, and you'll bring up this window right here. And you're going to click audio output capture. And you're going to go add source. As you can see, I already have second line and chat VoIP set up. But instead, if you wanted to just create a new one, you would go add new source. And I'm just going to create this one as test second line. We're going to go add source. And then from here, you're going to scroll down, and you're just going to pick line 2. And again, that's going to be the isolated line for Discord or for any other line that you want to use that line for. Boom, done. Okay. Step 10. This is the last step, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting, is now that you have a second line, if you don't only want to use it for like a chat / VoIP line, or if you want to listen into the next YouTube video for advanced tips and you maybe want a third line, so you can do what I have. You can have a chat / VoIP line here. You can have second line, which is what I use for music only, or like watching something on the internet. And then I have my main line. Okay. So now what Windows also lets you do when you go, so you open up, so to open up this settings, I'm gonna go all the way to the bottom, right click, and I'm gonna go open sound settings. This opens up the new Windows 10 like default UI sound settings. So you're gonna go like this. You can also see your main output and your input devices. Ignore that for now. We're gonna scroll down here. We're gonna go app volume and device preferences. So as you can see here, if I open up Chrome and I start playing, you know, any video, let's just play some music. I'll just a little bit of jazz there. Just gonna turn that down. So as you can see, I have Chrome set to always play on my second line. So what does that mean? As you can see, I'm playing the music. Chrome is playing on my second line, always. So this lets you, in Windows 10, automatically route where your audio chains want to go. So if let's say Discord didn't have that voice and video output channels, you could just do it like this. If you wanted, let's say, other apps to only play on line 2 or your chat / VoIP line, you could also do that as well. So this is just helping you understand. I'm gonna pause the music here. This just helps you understand that with Windows 10 a little bit, you also have the ability of routing your audio. If you think you don't have control over it, you actually do. So that is also another big bonus that you just need to be aware of. Okay, now the last thing I guess we'll teach you guys really quick is these volume sliders. So let's say I'm gonna go back here. Actually, I'm gonna play the music. So I'm playing the music on line 2 here, and you guys can hear the music in the background. I have it playing a little quieter, right? This slider here is only for me. So what does that mean? That means I can bring this all the way down. I don't hear the music, but you guys still do. That means, in essence, I could be playing music for the stream and I don't even have to listen to it. Or, you know, you have the ability of mixing audio in a sense where, you know, you have more than one volume slider for just everything, which is actually an advantage. Some people would go, what's the advantage of that? I'll explain that now in the sense of a microphone. So I'm going to pause the music. So now with the microphone, I turn my microphone down a little bit on the gain side here. As you can see, I have it like 0.4 or 0.8. And then I amplify it on this main line here. So the reason why is because I want my microphone to be not incredibly sensitive to the entire environment around it, right? So gain is the volume for the microphone itself, but I don't want the microphone to pick up all my clicks and pops, or, you know, some kind of thing happens in the background. I don't want it to pick all that up. So I turn the gain on the microphone down. If it's a hardware microphone like a Blue Yeti, you know, I also have gain knobs on the back to handle a little bit of that. I turn that down, right? And then on the output side, which is like the, you know, right here, I amplify it by 1.3 decibels, which just helps normalize that, push it up a little bit. So that means the microphone is technically quieter on its own as a source, but then I'm boosting its volume once it's going out. I hope that kind of makes sense. And then for the next thing for microphones, most people, what you should consider is having a compression ratio of about 1 or a little bit below 1, you know, 0.8 or 0.9. What compression does is helps add a little bit of presence to your voice, gives you a little bit more of a radio host voice. And the main thing that compression also does, or compressors will do, for anybody that has used them already in OBS or Streamlabs, is if you are screaming or whispering, it helps normalize your volume. So you won't, you know, for one, ear rape your, you know, viewers, and for two, if you're whispering or if I lean away a little bit, my voice should still be at a certain dynamic level. You still will notice the tonality difference between me being up close and me being far away, but compression should help make sure that it's not quiet for the viewers. And then noise gate is, of course, I just don't want the microphone active at all times. So by having a noise gate set up to a certain level, it's not picking up background, you know, hisses. If I have a fan, you know, that's making like a whoosh noise, that's not making my mic hot the entire time. Then if you move over here, you have a little bit of a mixer. As you can see, I amplify treble on both my lines by about 0.5, and then I turn down bass a little bit on my lines because I don't like being overloaded with bass. Bass is, you know, it can kind of ruin your experience. And then if you want to go one step further, you actually can turn on an EQ, as you can see here. So again, these master sections here are the actual output sources. I know it gets confusing with that many sliders, but again, you got to remember that little picture here. When we go back to this picture and we source this picture here, these sliders are for the sources. So let's say you had an XLR mic plugged in here. This is your microphone. This is like the slider. And then when you mix everything out into these two sliders are like the main. If you go back here, see how it says main mix right here? That's what these sliders are. These are your main mix sliders. These are the inputs. These are the source sliders. That's what you have to try to remember a little bit, okay? So let's say on A1 or B2, I wanted to add some intense EQ. If you understand EQ, well, you can do that as well. You can turn on the EQ right here and right click it, and then you can actually start editing some really crazy, you know, the way you want to make yourself sound. But for there, that will pretty much end it. We'll end it on that note. That pretty much explains how to use Voicemeeter on the intro basic level. Once you start using a Voicemeeter, the last thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you have audio restart engine turned on, and you have load settings on startup, and then save your settings as a file somewhere in your documents folder, whatever. Have it run on startup and have system tray turned on. So that way, system tray means when I hit X, it just goes back to the system tray here. That way you don't accidentally close the program. You have these things on. Voicemeeter is now your audio mixer, which you will be, you know, if you want, you just have it on a second monitor. Like me, I'm just dragging it over on another monitor over here. You just leave it there, and that's it. Hopefully, if you have a hardware mixer, if you're wondering how I could use these things on a hardware level, it does have the ability to interact with MIDI devices. But again, I will move all that stuff over into the advanced section. Last thing, guys, forgot to tell you. So when you open up the system settings here, and I have auto restart, what does auto restart mean, and what do you ever need to to consider for that? So if ever your system goes in sleep, or you have some of your USB devices, currently like me, I have a USB hub plugged into my monitor USB hub, which manages my, like a USB DAC, for audio. Anytime your computer goes to sleep or you turn a device on and off, Voicemeeter sadly does not have the ability to understand that the USB stack is being reset and turning on and off. And sometimes you will get, for example, like my Blue Yeti microphone, if I were to turn my monitor on and off, I'll show you right now, I'm going to turn my monitor on and off. Okay. That was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. Forgot my webcam's plugged into that as well. But as what happened, you're going to need to go like this, and you're going to need to restart. I'm going to start this over, actually. Okay, I'm going to just start this over. The last thing you guys need to keep in consideration is if ever you have USB devices plugged into, let's say, a device that turns off, or your computer goes to sleep, and sometimes when Windows wakes up from sleep, it's USB, the way it stacks its USB devices / lets an application open up is not in proper order. So let's say Voicemeeter snaps out of sleep before a USB audio interface or your headphones or something becomes active in Windows, you know what I mean? Like when Windows goes boop, 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 and it recognizes a USB device. When that happens, Voicemeeter will not have the ability to technically detect that, sadly, yet. And if you're wondering, why is my microphone not working, or why can't I hear any sound, that is simply, you need to restart the audio engine on Voicemeeter. So you go to menu, you go, and boom, bada bing, bada boom, your sound will be back. There's the last thing you need to keep in consideration. And most of the time, it is not a problem for most of the people because Windows is getting better with it. But for me, I have an older system, and the way my devices are hubbed and USB chained together, they don't wake up in a proper order. And sometimes because my USB mic is plugged into my monitor for privacy reasons, which actually means when I turn off my monitor, the microphone is completely off, which is just, for me, gives me that peace of mind. It's like a hardware off switch. I'll always have to when I turn the monitor back on. Keep that in consideration. So that will end it there. Ciao. Stay tuned for part 2, or go to YouTube and find advanced guides on how to continue using Voicemeeter Banana.